Running a small business means I wear lots of hats. When I put on my hiring hat, I can count on LinkedIn Hiring Pro to make it easy. LinkedIn Hiring Pro helps manage my hiring workflow, puts my job post in front of a unique network of professionals, and matches me with the best candidates for my business. I can also share my job with my network. No other job site lets me do that. No wonder most small businesses say they'd use LinkedIn Hiring Pro again. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
And we're live on match day as Doug reaches for a buffalo wing. He's got it! Oh, and he's gone for a can of Pepsi too! What a finish! There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi.
Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hi, welcome back to Unbound. This is Season 4, Invisible Daughter. I'm Beth. So in the last episode, we talked about the apprenticeship. You know, how that invisible labor gets assigned gradually, and it escalates so slowly that by the time you notice the weight, it feels like a part of your body, right? Today, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what that weight is actually made of. It's two things. It's the mental load, and it's the emergency contact role. So both of these things are invisible, but both are completely relentless. They're so normalized in the lives of daughters that most of us have never even stopped to think about them or name them out loud. So I'm going to do that today, okay? So picture this, it's 2:00 in the morning. You're lying in bed. Nothing's wrong in the moment. There's no active crisis. There's no emergency, and your brain will not stop. You're thinking, did you follow up on that prescription? Is there something your husband needs for work tomorrow that you haven't thought of? What time is your friend's appointment, the one she's nervous about? Did you respond to that message about the holidays? Should you check in on that neighbor who seemed off last week? This is the mental load. And for daughters, it doesn't clock out at the end of the workday, right? It runs continuously in the background of every waking hour and more than a few sleeping ones. The mental load is that cognitive labor required to keep a life and often several other people's lives functioning. You know, it's the remembering, it's the planning and the anticipating and the organizing. But for invisible daughters, it kind of extends outwards to encompass the emotional and practical management of entire families and social networks as well. It has several layers. So there's the cognitive layer. You know, remembering the appointments, the preferences, the deadlines, the important dates for so many people who are fully capable of tracking their own shit, right? And then there's the emotional layer. You're monitoring moods and you're anticipating needs and you're managing conflicts and you're providing support across all these relationships at the same time. And there's the anticipatory layer. You're predicting problems before they happen and quietly preventing a crisis that nobody will ever know that you prevented. And there's a coordination layer, being the communication hub and the scheduler and the organizer who makes sure all the moving parts keep moving. And there's the invisible layer, all of the work that happens behind the scenes to make other people's lives smoother and more comfortable, right? Work that's never seen and therefore it doesn't count, right? Nobody recognizes it. So I'm going to tell you about a woman named Prim. So she's 31, and she says at any given moment, she can give you a detailed status report on probably 17 different people in her life. She says she knows her mom's medication schedule, her sister's work stress, her best friend's relationship concerns, her neighbor's financial situation. She says, I realized how extensive it was when someone asked me to describe my own stress level. I started listing everything I was worried about, and they stopped me after 10 minutes to point out that none of it was actually about me. She wasn't carrying her own stress, she was carrying everyone else's. And the part that Prim found hardest to articulate, the mental load isn't just information. It's the anxiety that comes with it, right? She doesn't just remember her mom's appointment. She worries about the results. And she doesn't just track her sister's relationship. She feels responsible for providing wisdom and comfort. And she doesn't just coordinate events. She monitors whether everyone felt included and happy afterwards. right? The mental load isn't just remembering, she told me. It's feeling responsible for the outcome. And this is the distinction I want to point out. There's a difference between helping someone and carrying their mental load. Helping looks like responding to a request for support. But carrying the mental load looks like taking ownership of anticipating and remembering and planning and managing aspects of other people's lives. These things that they are completely capable of managing themselves, but you're taking them on. The shift from one to the other happens so gradually that most daughters don't notice it. We start out by offering assistance and end up owning like entire domains of other people's existence. It's crazy. Research consistently shows that daughters are assigned tasks requiring ongoing cognitive labor, while sons tend to receive discrete tasks with pretty clear endpoints. Take out the trash, mow the lawn, done. Daughters make sure everyone has what they need and keep an eye on how things are going and remember to follow up and coordinate everything. There's no endpoint. There is only this ongoing management of a system that everyone else gets to move through without managing, right? I spoke with a neuroscientist who studies cognitive load, and he put it pretty plainly. He said when the brain's executive function is consumed by managing multiple complex systems at the same time, less capacity is available for personal growth, creative thinking, and focused attention on your own life. The mental load doesn't just take time, it takes cognitive real estate that was meant for you. And we have normalized this completely. We call it being organized. We call it being thoughtful. We call it being a good daughter or wife or friend. And we don't call it what it actually is, and that's unpaid, unacknowledged, unsustainable labor. Now, I want to talk about what happens when the mental load collides with a crisis, okay? You become the emergency contact. Not officially. There was no meeting had amongst the families. But at some point, without ceremony or consent, you became the first call when anything goes wrong. You are the automatic solution to every problem. You are the person everyone reaches before they've tried to solve things themselves. So here's how that happens. And I know that you'll be able to identify with this. It starts with reliability. You help with a small crisis and it goes well and everyone's grateful and you feel useful. Now the precedent has been set. Then you become the go-to person. When a similar problem might arise, a family member will call you first because you're the path of least resistance. Then your availability kind of becomes an assumption, right? Your expertise gets exaggerated and your consent becomes an afterthought. And then you simply are the emergency contact. That's it for everything. Medical confusion, financial stress, relationship disasters, logistical nightmares, emotional meltdowns. Everything flows through you first. If this role were an actual job, the description would be extraordinary. Position, family emergency contact. Status, unpaid, on call, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no vacation, no sick days. Required qualifications, crisis management, medical advocacy, insurance navigation, legal research, therapeutic counseling, conflict mediation, financial planning, logistics coordination, compensation, sporadic gratitude, conditional family approval. No person in their right mind would accept this if it were offered as employment. And yet daughters across every background find themselves in this role through the gradual accumulation of these precedents that nobody planned and nobody named. Now I'm going to tell you about Gwen. Gwen is 29. She maintains what she privately calls her crisis portfolio. Ongoing management of emergencies for 7 different family members. And at any given moment, she's actively handling multiple situations that others consider urgent enough for her immediate attention. I realized I was running a family crisis management firm, she told me. I have actual files for different people, ongoing situations, medical timelines, legal deadlines, and insurance claims. It's like being a case manager, except nobody pays me and everyone assumes I'm immediately available. Gwen estimates she spends 15 to 20 hours a week on unpaid crisis management. The thing that finally got to me, she said, was realizing that these aren't even my emergencies. These are problems other capable adults can work through themselves, but it's easier to call me. I've become everyone's outsourced problem-solving department. One of the most exhausting parts of this role is something that I want to name directly, and that's the emotional toll of absorbing other people's crises, right? It's not just the time and the logistics. It's the secondhand stress of managing other people's worst moments and the anxiety of being responsible for outcomes that you cannot fully control. So emergency contacts also develop like this particular kind of chronic hypervigilance, right? It's a low level, just constant alertness to the possibility of the next call, right? The stress isn't only during actual emergencies, it's the ongoing anticipation of them. So the inability to fully relax because some part of you is always waiting exists. I talked to someone named Faye, and Faye decided to experiment with what would happen if she stepped back during what her family considered a crisis. Her brother's anxiety about a job interview the next day. He called late one night wanting her to help him prepare. Now, historically, she would have stayed on the phone for hours. Instead, she tells me that she told him, "I understand you're nervous. I believe you're prepared, and I'm confident you'll handle it well. I need to rest now. I'm sending you good thoughts." She says he escalated, and when she maintained her position, he got angry and he accused her of not caring about his future. But the next morning, he went to the interview and he got the job. Faye says he handled it completely on his own, but he was furious with me for not providing the emotional regulation he had come to expect. And that was the moment I understood that so many of our family emergencies aren't actually emergencies. They're requests for me to manage other people's normal anxiety and discomfort. And there's a difference. To me, that difference is everything. I don't want to close today without talking about what it looks like to begin shifting these patterns, because we're going to talk a bit about that. The mental load can be redistributed. It kind of requires making the invisible visible, right? You want to literally document what you're tracking and managing and anticipating so that others can kind of see the scope of what has been handed to you. It requires asking others to manage their own information instead of kind of routing it through you, right? It requires tolerating the discomfort of things being handled differently or even imperfectly by somebody else. The emergency contact role can be renegotiated as well. It requires kind of distinguishing between genuine emergencies that need your presence and routine problems that grown-ass capable adults can work through on their own. It probably requires developing clear internal criteria for, what gets your immediate attention and what gets directed elsewhere. Neither one of these things is easy. Both of them require consistency in the face of resistance, for sure, and guilt. But they begin kind of with the same first step. You need to name what's actually happening. You are not just being helpful. You're carrying this enormous and invisible, uncompensated, that's the big one, load. And you're allowed to put some of it down. Okay? Trust me. Next episode, we're going to move into 2 chapters that kind of hit close to home for me, the emotional janitor role and the sandwich generation experience. If you've ever found yourself kind of standing in the middle of a family conflict that you didn't create, trying to make everyone feel better about something that had nothing to do with you, the next episode is the one you want to listen to. I'm going to leave you with that one question, though. If you made a list of everything you're currently tracking and managing on behalf of other people, how long would that list be? I challenge you to write it down this week, not to feel worse, but to see what you've been carrying. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit author.bethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.